Okay, everyone, welcome. Went off the grid a little. Here we are. We're in the middle of Key to Redemption. It's the middle of the night for those of you back in the States. I'm actually giving this class from the Holy Land, which is great. Let's draw the light from the Holy Land for the entire world. Even if it's night in certain places, let it be lit up with a godly light. We are now, so this class is actually being given in Jerusalem, not just the Holy Land, but the Holy City. So let's see how this will all go down. We are holding over here. We began last week on Wednesday. The class, which was supposed to be last week's Dvar Malchus, last week's. This is episode 4 of Kia to Redemption in Our Hands. Last week we did the introductory class, which is the first four chapters in the Rebbe's talk. Behar, Bechukosei. And today we're going to do step 2. We're a little behind because this could have been the next one already, Dvar. But the content is very much connected to the desert, so we'll see how we'll catch it up. Bezrat Hashem. Okay. Hopefully with Hashem's help, we'll have tomorrow another class, and to try to finish this up. Okay, so just bringing us back, last week we discussed the main question in the discourse, in the talk, was why is the desert, the wilderness, the chosen place for the giving of the Torah? And the way we brought what it says in the Midrash, the Rebbe brought what it says in the Midrash, when Hashem says, just like a desert and a wilderness doesn't have any owner, so too the Torah doesn't have any owners. Anybody that wants can come and take it. We asked the question, that doesn't seem like the way Hashem transmitted the Torah to us. The way God transmitted the Torah to us was in a manner in which He either gave it to us or we inherited it. It's more of it's not like He's dropping, as last week we used the example, it's not like God is dropping old furniture at the curbside and saying anybody that wants to take it can come take it. He actually intentionally gives it to us, or even deeper than that, inherit it to us because we are an extension of Him. It's not like a cold drop-off. What does it mean that the Torah is given in a wilderness? And then we discussed further, why is the concept that the Torah is given in a wilderness, which is the wilderness of Sinai, emphasized primarily in the parsha before the giving of the Torah itself, which is Parshas Bamidbar, which is actually going to be this week's Torah portion, and not in Behar Bechukosei, which is also connected to the giving of the Torah, as we proved last week in the episode 1, how the sages instituted that we should read Bechukosei on purpose, intentionally before Shavuos. And yet over there, even though we're referring to Sinai, to Har Sinai, it is referred to as a mountain, not as a wilderness. So to understand all of this, again, this is not a review of the previous class, just a tiny little catch-up. You can listen to that one to understand all of this. He introduced the concept of why would it even be important, a specific place where to give the Torah, when the Torah is really applicable everywhere at all times. If the Torah would have certain limitations of places in which Torah could be studied and learned and observed, then it would make a difference. You have to find an appropriate place. But if the Torah is timeless and spaceless, so really space shouldn't have any impact on it, on the determination of where God gives the Torah. And yet we find that it is specific for the reasons that we mentioned earlier. And if that's the case, why is that? We explain that's because the Torah was meant to have an impact on the world, and not just a small impact, but the Torah was meant to uncover the godly potential of the world itself, and to make the world, the space itself, time and space, ready and fitting and a recipient, a vessel, a container for the Torah. So even though the Torah is applicable everywhere, but by the Torah choosing a specific place, in thereby saying, I want to not just be everywhere, but I want to be in a place that's fitting for me. What that is demonstrating is that the intention of the Torah is not just to be adhered to and listened to everywhere, but to uplift the recipients, including the entire world and all of time and space, to become fitting for the Torah, to become a receptacle for the Torah, to become a compatible with the Torah. It's one thing that something is everywhere. It's another thing that the everywhere is ready for that being, is set, is prepared, is refined, is elevated. And that's the purpose. And that's why God chose a specific place, saying, I want the place to be worthy of me, not just me to be everywhere, not to me for me to overwhelm everything and everywhere, so that just because I want to be everywhere, but I want everywhere to be a vessel for me, to match me, to be my home. And in order to explain that, the Rebbe, the last thing we learned was he introduced the concept that the Torah, we're going to draw an amazing relationship between how God created the world and how Hashem transmitted the Torah. Both of them follow a similar pattern because the Torah was meant to click with the world to enable the ultimate purpose of creation, its merging and its unification with Hashem to happen. So we find the idea that when God, what it says in tractate, the Ethics of the Fathers, in the parak, in the chapter associated with last week's Shabbos, we studied the 5th chapter, and over there the first Mishnah begins with the words, with 10 utterances God created the world. And that idea that God created the world in 10 utterances is going to be discussed amazingly in today's talk. But first, the concept that God created the world with 10 utterances matches the Torah, because the Torah was given with 10 commandments. The initial delivery of the Torah was in the form of 10 commandments, which matches and is in sync with the way God created the world with 10 utterances. We're talking about two different things. 10 utterances is discussed in Bereshit, in Genesis, in the story of creation. 10 commandments is discussed in Exodus, in the story of the giving of the Torah. Yet we find a parallel that both of them are created or brought or formulated in a form of 10. And the idea that who says that there is, maybe it's random, even though there's nothing random, but maybe someone can argue, who says there's the direct relationship between the two. So the Rebbe brought the Zohar, in which in the book of Zohar it says on the verse, Asara Asara Shekel HaKodesh, that the 10 is the holy the holy shkalim, which is referring to the spoons. The spoons. Let's see which was the verse that Rebbe brings. Asara, no, not Asara Shekel HaKodesh. I remember there was a word missing. Asara Hakaf b'Shekel HaKodesh. That the spoons that were given as the gift for the inauguration of the tabernacle were given with a lavish gift from the princes of each tribe, and each one had a golden spoon. When the Torah summarizes all the gifts of them all together, it says 10. The weight of each one was 10 gold coins, but it uses the term 10. So the Zohar says, what is this alluding to? This is alluding to the 2 times 10 that we find. The 10 utterances in which God created the world and the 10 commandments. And the reason why what's the connection 10? So the Zohar says, because the 10 utterances were only uttered to facilitate and for the sake of the Torah. And it was the whole justification of creating a world was because later God was going to give the Torah, was going to give the 10 commandments. So God initially designed the world to be compatible to the Torah by designing the world, by creating it with 10 commandments. And as a result of that, it can ultimately become a receptacle for the Torah, which is also 10, which means the Torah is much deeper in God's mind. It's the heart of hearts. That's where there is that's what he really, really, really cares about. And then he created a world which is very dear to him, but it's meant to be a place where the Torah can apply. So he designs the world to match the infrastructure of the Torah. And as we learned in the last idea was that the purpose of this design is that through observing the 10 commandments within the world, we will then uncover the 10 utterances that are. So I'm sorry. When within the world we observe the 10 commandments of the Torah, it helps us peel away and remove the blockages so that we can uncover the 10 utterances with which God created the world. Because the way the world was created was in a manner in which the creation obscures and hides and conceals its divine content, its divine infusion. The world, nature, and the matter and materials of the world act as a block. Taken on its own without work, without effort, the physical and the material world are obstructions for God's truth. When you're taking a walk down the street without thinking too deeply, you're not overwhelmed with God's presence like an angel walking through heaven. When an angel walks down the street in heaven, every moment he is moved by the enormous goodness and kindness and amazingness of the divine, because it feels and senses the divine everywhere, because God is crying out from every street corner in heaven, every stone. There's no, because there's no stones there. The heavenly stones are such that bespeak the Creator the moment you see them. But the earthy stones are ones that just look like matter. They look like stuff. And stuff do not reveal God unless we probe deeper. But when we keep the commandments and study Torah, and through the accumulation of hundreds of years of observance of the commandments, we soften the materials of the world. We polish, if we might say, the opaque elements in creation, that they slowly start becoming first translucent, and you can start vaguely appreciating that there is a being creating it all, which are the 10 commandments, and eventually it becomes completely transparent, so that we don't even see anymore the creations. We only see the divine, the creative energy creating everything. And that's the way it's going to be when Mashiach is fully here. We're just going to be struck, and we're going to be awestruck by the divinity of everywhere and everything. And then we're not going to see things anymore as stuff. We're going to see ourselves living in a dazzling world of divine transmission and divine audio. God's words will make up our reality. And that's the truth, what it really is right now. That's the truth. That's the truth of the sidewalk, the street corners, and the cafes, and the supermarkets, and the banks, marketplaces, and everything that exists, facilities, hospitals, schools, education centers, transportation, everything. The truth of everything is only the words of God. It's God's poetry. That's what it is. A living, continuous unfolding of God's poetry, magnificent poetry. But when we look at it, we see stuff. That's because it's still a work in progress. The world is not yet where it needs to be. The lights have not yet turned on as a result of all what we've polished. But it's about to happen. And how does it all happen? Through the continuous exercises of Torah and mitzvahs, which are really all based in the Ten Commandments, they help reveal the deep secret that the world has. And as we left off in last week's class, the truth of the concealment is not concealment. The truth of the darkness of the world is that the world is holding a very deep secret. It's two ways of saying something is hiding. Something is hiding could be that the thing that is hiding is negative. We say this is a bad, this is a block. Let's tear down the wall. In that sense, we might think we have to destroy the creation to remove. It's like before creation, the infinite light of God was present everywhere. Then the stuff came about and it's blocking, it's obstructing. It's almost like you're going to a show and you got a seat and you've got a terrible seat because there's a big beam holding up the building and the beam is obstructing your view. And you wish you had a bulldozer and you can take down that beam. You know, it wouldn't be a good idea for everybody that's in the stadium or in the theater. But meanwhile, the beam is bothering you. You can't watch. You can't enjoy. You're all frustrated. You're planning to write in to a customer care and get a refund for your ticket for getting such a lousy seat with this big beam blocking you. That's one type of an obstruction, a concealment. But then there's another type of a concealment and an obstruction, where it's not a concealment and obstruction. It's someone who's there who comes and they are holding a secret. There's also something hiding, but it's because they have the deepest secret. Here, you don't want to destroy them. You want to debrief them and hopefully get them to spill the secret. Quite on the contrary, if you destroy them, you're never going to know the secret. If you have someone that has a secret to healing of cancer, but you know that they have it and they're hiding it, you want to protect this individual. You want them to live as long as possible until you're able to extract the secret out of this individual. Our physical world holds the deepest, most beautiful secret ever about the truth of God that the infinite light before creation did not convey. And only the obstructive world and the materials of the world, it is holding that secret. So now we just have to debrief the world, extract its jewels, its gems, let it speak its deep secret. And how will we find its deep secret? By investigating further the depth of the sciences of the physical world. Yesterday, I had an interesting experience. I was in Tel Aviv University, and a friend of mine was being honored. They're opening a whole new building. The first time I was in Tel Aviv University, and they were opening a new building on nanoscience. And I got to meet one of the coolest top scientists in the world. And I had conversations with them, and I was sharing with them based on what they were sharing about what their fields are and what they're going to be doing, their laboratories that are going to be in these new buildings. Literally, this is one of the scientists there is the one who created an artificial heart from tissue. He grows tissues. He's on the work of creating, literally taking people's, he builds from tissue. He can build new kidneys and new hearts, and it's wild stuff. This is like science on levels that are like way out into the future. So it was really cool. And I met with another person building bones. Half the stuff I just don't understand because it was scientific language. But I shared with them the Hasidic elements of what we're teaching over here, and they were so excited that what I had to say about the physical world, what the Kabbalists say, was a great moment. So in any ways, I'm appreciating this. From last week till this week, I appreciate it so much more. This idea that the physical, further exploring the physical, going deeper and deeper and deeper into the physical. But what enables us to do that is for the physical to open up and not be rigid and hold and just look like stuff, but to see the magic that there is in the material in the physical world, to get the physical to speak, to open up, to convey its truth. That's like amazing. Oh, by the way, there's a third scientist. This I'll share. Again, this is a little off the script of the Rebbe's talk, but again, I'm so excited about this. It's so messianic. The third scientist was one who was, again, these are people who are going to have their laboratories in this new building, which is almost done, finished. It's going to be finished in a few months. It's the most advanced um, building of research that they have in Tel Aviv University. So one of these people, he's doing research on reading DNA. So they read DNA, but he said in DNA itself, only what has been read till now are only the letters. Like DNA have a code, they have letters. But in addition to the letters, he said there are what's called, he compared it to reading in the Torah, which have the nekudot. The nekudot are the vowels, and then there are the signs on the top, the musical notes, which when you read it when you read the same word, but you read it with different nekudot, then it has a different meaning. And the vowels are different, it can have a different meaning. And also sometimes the same song of it can also change the meaning. So he says, until now, all of scientific research has always been on the letters of DNA. But there are deeper, and here you see the way, God's world mimics and reflects this very idea that we're talking about, that the world was created to match the Torah, and it's derived from the Torah. So in the Torah, we find that the letters of the Torah have deeper levels. Some of them are seen, and some of them are not even seen in the Torah. And we've discussed in earlier classes how the Torah we study today are only the letters. We haven't even begun to see and interpret the vowels and the song. That's going to be the teachings of Mashiach. And that's what this guy is exploring in the scientific realm. So I shared with him this idea. And he got so excited. He said, he wants me to come to Tel Aviv University and spend some time there with the scientists. That would be really cool. In any case, I just came for 2-3 days here. But one of the reasons I came was for that event that was on Sunday, because this person was a friend of mine was honored, and we came in his honor for this event. It was very special. So it matches on what we're learning over here. In any case, this is all kind of a summary and a review of what we learned last week. Now I'm going to continue over here. Now I am using my phone because I don't have the book in front of me. Didn't bring my library. So don't mind me reading from a phone over here, because I'm one of the elephants. One of the beautiful elements today of technology is that you don't have to carry all your library when you go places. Everything is inside here. So you can get all the Rebbe's talks in, there's an app that has them all, obviously in Hebrew or in Yiddish, and it's called Mafteach. And that's where I found this, because I forgot to bring the book that I needed to finish this class. And it's also, but again, that's what I'm reading from the phone over here. In any case, okay. So we learned that through the Torah, we uncover the godliness it's meant to uncover for the creation to reveal its secret. And now we continue in chapter number 5. Now in chapter 5, the Rebbe says, now the way the Torah unlocks the secret of creation comes in 2 stages. There's 2 stages of revelation, which each one reveals something special that the other does not reveal. And this is related to what it says in Pirkei Avos, in the Mishnah. In the Mishnah that we discussed earlier, that says that in 10 utterances God created the world, the Mishnah makes an interesting statement. The Mishnah says God created the world with 10 utterances. But why did he have to create the world with 10 utterances? He could have created the world just with one utterance. The world could have been created with one utterance. Meaning, hypothetically, God needs 10 utterances to create the world. He can create it with one utterance. And I guess if someone can create just by talking, so he's super cool, then he could have created all with one utterance. So we're going to see what this means on a much deeper level. That's a simple thing the Mishnah says. He created it with 10, could have done it with 1. If he could have done it with 1, why did he expend 10 utterances when he could have done the job with 1? So the Mishnah answers, only in order to punish the wicked and reward the righteous. In other words, in order to be able to have reward and punishment in the world, God brought about that the world should be created in 10 utterances instead of with 1 utterance. Why? Because if you would have created the world, on a simple reading, now first, if we would have created the world with 1 utterance, so those who upkeep the world and further develop the world are upkeeping a world that has the value of one utterance. And when they get the reward, they get rewarded for a project that is a one utterance project. The value of a one utterance. Oh, but now that God spent 10 utterances creating the world, so therefore, when God rewards the righteous for developing the world and upkeeping the world, and making the world a beautiful place, so then they deserve big reward. Because take a look, God spent 10 utterances on creating the world. They deserve an enormous amount of, it's an important project to God. It's a 10 utterance project for God. He spent, like you would say, he spent $5 billion on this project. God spent 10 utterances on the project. And therefore your reward deserve a lot of reward. The punishment, the same as the wicked, people who mess the world up. So these people, if the world would have been made out of one utterance, no. So what did they mess up already? They destroyed a cheap thing, one utterance. Now the world is super expensive. God made it with 10 utterances. He destroyed a world of 10 utterances, a much bigger punishment. That is the Mishnah at face value. The Rebbe asks the question. He's not the first one to ask this question. This question is asked by previous commentators on the Mishnah. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. Why doesn't it make sense? If I can buy an object for $10 and I went ahead and spent a fortune on it, and I spent $1,000 buying this cheap little whatever, because I was ripped off, and I spent $1,000 on it, and then someone comes and steals it or breaks it, what will they owe me? Will they have to pay? Will they be liable for $10 or will they be liable for $1,000? Of course, the judge will say, let's take a look what the value of this thing is. Let's look it up, see what the cost of this thing, you Google it, see what you can get it for. If the value of it sells, the basic average price for this is $10, who cares that you spent $1,000? That's your problem. The other person is not liable for that. So why, if God could have created the world with one utterance, that means its value is one utterance. The fact that he went and he decided to spend the extra time or effort to create it when it wasn't necessary, so why would that increase the value of the world and therefore increase the reward and increase the severity of the punishment? How would that work? Why would that work? That's a really good question. And the answer to this, again, there's many answers, but the answer that we will be focusing now is that when it says he could have created the world with one utterance, so it would seem like the Mishnah is saying he could have, but he didn't. That's like what could have been, but that never happened. It was, in the end, it was created with 10. But the deeper meaning is that when God could, by him, a could doesn't remain a could, a potential is actualized. Since by God he could create the world in one utterance, it means he actually did create the world with one utterance. So he created it in one utterance. So what's the 10 utterances? The answer is he created it also with 10 utterances. So the world has two elements. It's created twice. It's created with one utterance and it's created with 10 utterances. Or we might look at it in a better way of understanding it. The world has two dimensions to it. There is one stage in creation in which all of creation is created with one utterance. Everything that exists, all included in that one utterance. That's stage number one. Let's refer to it, stage A or stage one. And then stage two of creation is that God now creates the world with 10 utterances. That very world that was created with one is now further created with 10. What does that mean? It means as follows. Had God created the world, the significance of creating the world with one utterance means that Hashem is creating matter that matter should come into existence. From non-existence to existence. The concept what's called ex nihilo. God creates from absolute nothingness into something. Once you come from nothing to something, that somethingness, the very fact that there is existence, that there is something, that something really is equal to everything. A tree is something, a stone is something, water is something, fire is something. We're dealing already with stuff. We're dealing with things. We're dealing with a material, different types of material. But the fact that from non-beingness there is beingness, in a sense, we can say that the fact that there is a common denominator, a commonality in all of existence, is that they now are as opposed to being not. They came from non-being into being. So beingness itself is shared by all creatures and all existence, all types of existences, heaven and earth. Everything is a being. It comes from non to yet. Now that power was created with one utterance. God brought everything into being. Now the second stage of creation is to give form and definition and specifics to that material. Once there is now the substance of beingness, how is that going to come about? So now God is going to further design each being to have its own characteristics and its own specifics and its own personality. And there, each creature and each being will come out in a unique, different form and shape, all the way that to the point where there are no two snowflakes that look alike, and there are no two fingerprints that are exact. So here, God is getting into the meticulous definition of specifying and detailing each creation, each being, each face to be unique and different. Yeah, that's the idea of 10. The 10 later translate. The 10 is also a stage of the concept of 10 means giving already variation to an otherwise unified, singular type of being, giving variation. Once there is variation, it doesn't remain in 10. 10 of the primary building blocks matching the 10 attributes of God, which later are mixed together in a gazillion different forms. And from these 10, but they all are derived from these 10 attributes, 10 powers, 10 essential variations. And when you mix them together in the endless amount of combinations which come about through the various different words that God spoke, and letters, and backwards and forwards, and so on, like discussed in the book of Formation, Sefer Yetzirah, you get a world, a multicolored, multi-dimensional world of an endless amount of variation and style and uniqueness to each creature and each being. So now what we're saying over here is that there's two levels to existence. There is one level to existence where there just is existence, which that everybody's equal. We're all in the same boat, so to speak. Everything is created. It's all now God is looking at the world and he has a creation and not noticing the differences of the creation. It's a boatload, it's a shipload of creations. It's a whole, it's everybody together. Everybody's lumped together into this state of existence. That was created with one utterance. Then the individualities of the creations and beings, all of that is related to the 10 utterances. Now, so what does that mean? Let's go a little deeper into that. And then we'll have to understand what does it mean. So now we can understand why, when it's 10 utterances, the reward and punishment. But we'll get to that in a moment. So the deeper idea of this idea is when God creates the entire world with one utterance, as again, we're saying it's not the Mishnah does not mean it could have happened, that he could have created it with one, but then he decided not to create one and created many, but he actually created it both with one and with many. So what is that? What is the difference between them on a deeper level? In the creation, where God creates all of creation with one utterance, the meaning of the creation that the creation conveys, the value is not us. It has nothing to do with us, which meaning us as creations. The attention, the compliment is not to us. We can't be complimented on who we are and what we are. We cannot be praised for who we are and what we are. There is nothing beautiful or significant in each and every one of us, because it's not about us. It's about our Creator. It's about the power that the Creator has now demonstrated. In creating a creation, and again, we're talking about the sum totality of all of existence and all of creation, God has demonstrated an omnipotence, an ability that no other being has. Because nobody can create something from nothing. All creation, everything that is, go to those fancy schmancy labs that they were creating in the Tel Aviv University, and there were these people talking about taking tissue and further creating. That's if you have tissue already. That's if you have already DNA. You can work with the DNA and discover and create cures. That's one of the things they can do. This is what he's planning on doing when you're reading in, as we discussed earlier, into the elements of the DNA that they never read before. You're able to detect illnesses on a very, you can see where differences are, where people that are, God forbid, predisposed to certain illnesses and so on and so forth, and you can treat it at a very, very early stage. He says, for example, his idea was that cancer, God forbid, can be treated as a chronic illness if you catch it very, very early. And that's when you see that there are certain, going back to what we were talking earlier, when you see that there is a fluke or certain cells that are showing up different early. Now, how can you read that? You can read that in not in the DNA itself, but in the higher levels of the DNA. That's where you can see that. And then you can catch things at such an early stage where it's nothing to fix it, as opposed to the work that needs to be done, God forbid, once things reach an advanced stage. So basically, we're dealing with, curing the worst diseases. And the science can hopefully be ready very soon. Hashem should help. But in any case, why am I bringing that out? Is because the first idea of so what you see is that scientists, when they're working, whatever their work they're doing is they're starting with something. When you have something, then God has given us enormous abilities, and with technology and so on and so forth, to replicate, to create. I don't know, but to create something from nothing is only in the hands of the omnipotent being, only God Himself. And the reason why God can create something from nothing on a deep, deep, deep philosophical level is because we all come from somewhere. Our existence is not absolute. We come from somewhere. There was a cause that caused us to be. If we don't come from anywhere, we should have always been. The fact that I was not always just here for a couple of years, right? And we all, whoever is listening over here, has also been here just for a couple of years. You can decide how big that couple is, but it's not forever and ever. We have a beginning. We have a birthday when we came into the world, or maybe earlier we have a conception day when we were conceived, and our existence started. But there was a day before that when we were not, right? So we come from somewhere. There was a cause to our existence. Because of that, our power is limited because we come from somewhere. So we can only God gave us an ability to be creative. We can come up, but we can only create from something that is. Because we too our existence is not an absolute existence. We come from a cause. So we can only bring forth things when there is a cause. So one thing can cause another thing. But God, the prime being, when you put everything back, when you reboot everything, and let's go all the way, reverse. Let's put everything in reverse. Let's undo everything and put everything back, rewind. Let's hit the rewind button. of billions. Okay, it's no billions of years to creation. According to the Torah, 5,783 years. So let's make rewind. And then if you want to go pre-time and rewind, because even before creation, there's all these various different evolving energies and maybe spiritual worlds. I don't know exactly how we count the spiritual worlds when they come into being. But things are all plugged in one after another. Imagine we hit rewind and we rewind everything back. Eventually, you come to the first being, the being of all beings. And then there's no, you hit, it doesn't rewind like the record doesn't rewind anymore. The tape used to have tape recorded. You rewind it to the beginning. Now it doesn't turn anymore because you came to the beginning. When we come to the beginning, you rewind to who? What's the first being? The first being is the absolute being who doesn't come from anywhere, doesn't have a cause, who doesn't wonder where do I come from. He is because he is. It doesn't happen to be. He has to be, as the philosophers use the term. Mechuyev HaMetzias, the being who exists because he is, not because of any reason. He is with absolute existence without a cause. Because he himself is without a cause, he can therefore do something that doesn't have a cause. And that's the idea of creation. Creating matter means to create something from nothing, an existence without a cause. Now, even though you'll argue and you'll say, what are you talking about, an existence without a cause? He is the cause of all the existence. Of course, every existence has a cause, because the cause is God is the cause. That's true. But the way God creates the world is in a way where he doesn't create the world where he flows. His essential substance being flows into the world. So then we would be calling like, I am making something from something. I'm making a house from bricks. So the bricks themselves are becoming part of the house. That would kind of mean that when God is creating, his true essential being is now being introduced into the world. And that means, in a sense, when God is creating the world and putting himself into the world, we're cutting out pieces of him, which is now being lessened because he's now being himself into the world. It doesn't work that way. God doesn't lose anything of himself when he creates the world. And that is because he doesn't create the world of the substance of himself. He creates the world something from nothing. And that nothingness, the Kabbalists explain, the Hasidic masters explain what that nothingness is. Isn't that nothingness of God? It is of God, but it's nothing to him. It's like a ray of him that doesn't have any of his substance. And therefore, the worlds are really created from nothing, without any cause. There's nothing there. And even though God is the something that's creating it, they're as if he is not their source. That's how he remains outside and above them, utterly above them and outside of them, and therefore you can't trace them into him. This is deep philosophical discussions that there are thousands of pages of deep Hasidic teachings that discuss this idea. Being that that's the case, that God creates the world something from nothing, and therefore, and here's the thing, the world that is created is nothing more than a display of God's ability to create something from nothing. Again, on the level, before God gets down to start formulating the beautiful faces of each creature and each being and making everything individual, the main idea that he now created something from nothing, the one utterance that God used to create, over here, the wow, the way God wows us is not with the world. He wows us with an ability that no one else has. He can create something from nothing. So therefore, when we do the applause, what are we applauding? We're not applauding the world. We are applauding him for making the world. But there's no applause to the world. The world is not of significance. The world really doesn't have any significance in this case at all, because its only significance is that it's bringing about an applause for God, which is beautiful. It makes the world very significant because it is causing God to get an applause. What's his applause? That he created a world. But here's the thing, the world itself you can't clap for, because the world itself, on the one hand, doesn't have any of God's truth true existence that you should say, we have a little crumb of him. We don't even have a crumb of him. The worlds are so insignificant and so not of him that they're really nothing. And take it even further. Their really nothingness, that very existence that exists, which includes everything on this level, doesn't have an intrinsic ability to carry itself. It's only the power, his power to create something from nothing, which that continuously makes the something be. So the world can't even take a tiny bit of credit, show anything for themselves, because if for whatever reason he pulls his will out, his will stops willing this into existence, it ceases to exist a second. That means that the world doesn't have any grip on its own existence. We don't have any control over it, even for a split second. It's a power of the creator and higher than it, and infinitely higher than it, that's willing it, and we have no grasp on it. We can't guarantee, we can't underwrite even 1 second that it will exist a second longer. No one in the world has the power to underwrite even 1 second of this existence. So we are helpless, literally not in control, and there is nothing of his true substance that is in our existence that we can be proud of or brag about. The only thing we do have is what we are contributing over here, is that because of us, because of creation, there is we can now say, wow, look at this magnificent, omnipotent, absolute, incredible being who can create something from nothing. So all the attention goes to the creator, not to the creation. God didn't like that. God didn't like a world where everything in the world is only pointing to him. God wanted a world where the world itself will gain significance and importance. And therefore God said, you know what, I can leave the world created where it's all about me, but I don't want that. So let me now continue and take the world that I created with one utterance and speak it into 10 utterances. When God is now speaking it into 10 utterances, what he's really doing is he's really zooming in to make the world and each creature of the world important, significant, and beautiful. It's like an artist who's not just where you're saying, wow, such an awesome artist, but the artist wants you to actually take a look and admire each and every painting that he made. And the artist is like feeling great about, take a look at the awesomeness of the art. He's giving you he's getting frustrated if it's just about him. He wants, there's one thing like people say, oh, the value, this is a Monet, or this is and had what's his name? Who was the other? I go all these various different artists. What's his name? A Rembrandt, or the much later guy. So there are people who study the art and can actually sit and write and talk and explain to you the talent of the artist that went into this particular picture. And then there is the super billionaire who doesn't care about anything. He just walks in there and wants to buy the art because it's a Monet or because it's a Rembrandt. So the artist that would be there would be like, come on, okay, I know it's my signature is very important, but please take 5 minutes to admire the art. So in the 10 utterances, God wants us to admire the art, not the artist only. Of course, once you recognize the art is so significant, you recognize that the artist is so special, that look what he made in all the details of his art. But here we become very, very important, because we are all part of God's art, in which every single one of us and every little detail of each and every one of us is of such significance and such importance. So the world becomes completely, gets a whole different meaning. The creatures of the world are now significant on a whole new level. And here is where And here is where God has made, I don't know why I once gave a little class on this very talk of the Rebbe. I don't know why, but this was like kind of the idea that came to my head. Another way of like viewing and appreciating the difference of what we're talking about. A world where you see only oneness, and a world where you see the details and the details of the details. The zooming out and the zooming in. So you have this philanthropist who gave $1 million, few $1 million, give $5 million to build a school, an education campus, and the school, but it was a unique school, right? And okay, they hire a principal and an administrator and a manager, and they hire teachers, and there's all the various different teachers, and there's the first grade and the preschool, and there's the middle school, and there's the high school, and let's say there's what to really be proud about. This is a school that is really, really, really completely devoted to creating students that are really equipped for life, both scholastically, morally, ethically, growing up to be really beautiful men, being beautiful people. And let's say, after the school is there for 20 years and it's thriving and has produced so much, the philanthropist, this is the first time, is coming to visit the school and coming to what we call shetnachas, of take pride in what he or she has achieved. So he comes with his family, with his wife, maybe his close friends, and they're coming to admire the school. So there is a massive preparation. The school is coming. There's a welcoming committee, and they know that this wasn't possible without the philanthropy of this individual. So there's an assembly and the teacher. So now, first of all, that there's going to be the teacher is going to walk, not the teacher, this philanthropist is going to walk through the school. And of course, there's a big plaque on the entrance of the school. This building is donated by so and so. The school is there, whatever. He's so excited to see his name. And as he's taking the tour, and he goes into this classroom, and he goes into that classroom, and he goes into the thing, and he goes into that, and he's so proud for his family. You realize what really is he is experiencing over here is not so much the individuality of all the children, of all the specific unique talents of the teachers, although the principal is giving him the walkthrough, is telling him the uniqueness of how they built the education system and to care for each child and in each way, and there's this program and there's that program. But to him, there's one swoop. This is my school. This is my school. And in all that he sees really is himself, his great achievement. He put his money to something that's really special. It's a good thing to do. It's a wonderful thing to do. And that's what he sees. The principal who deals with the day-to-day dealings and recognizes each kid by their name, each one where they were. They came from broken homes, from difficult homes, children that other schools or other environments would have been completely lost. But over here, they brought in the best educators, the best who can deal with all kinds of conditions, with rowdy children, with ADHD, with autistic children, with this kind of child. And he knows the history and the story of each and every one of them. And he watches where they're thriving, and he sees a whole different picture. As much as he's conveying to this philanthropist, the philanthropist sees himself in all of it. This was my 10 billion or $10 million. My money has been working. Okay, this is what I have done. So it's all encompassed in his philanthropy and his goodness. But there's a whole different story over here. There's the story of this particular teacher. There's the story of this particular teacher, and this particular guide, and this sports coach, and this music teacher, and this, and all of this comes together to create such nuanced significance and such achievement and such growth. And not only the faculty, but the actual students and their achievements and their growth, each one with their own story. That's a whole, that's a different, that's a whole different vision. And it's a whole different experience. And here, these are the two utterances that God, two levels. There's one story in creation where God is the great philanthropist. He creates all of it and all of existence. There's another story where there is the story of the individual, the story of the world. And that's a 10 utterance. God purposely created it that way because he wants a world of detail. He wants a world where there is significance, where there is what to complement on each creature and on each being. We can understand that a world where there is such, where the art itself is important, not only that there is that God signed his name on it, but that the art itself is significant and important, then we understand that for all it has, the reward and the punishment that going back to that is much greater, because you have something, the thing itself is of value. If it all is that it's God's world, fine. It has a uniform value. But here it has a detailed value, a specific value. And therefore, because of its value, every little detail counts. And its counts and its significance is very, very important. And therefore, every type of repair we do in the world deserves attention and deserves a particular type of a reward. And God wanted us and there to be partners in him in the detailed world, not just in the uniform world in which we're recognizing the creator. Now, to add to this all, the individual talents and specifics and personality traits that Hashem has created us, each one, for each and every one of us to be able to shine and to make a difference and to contribute something different and unique that only we can achieve and only we can give and only we can contribute. Those contributions are all matching and reflecting the nuances of the divine. In other words, God, if, for example, those people who contribute through their brains, they're brain people, and they improve the world through their, as we spoke earlier, of these scientists and great, great minds. So what are their minds? These are divine. This is part of the divine intelligence. God shares of his divine intelligence with these people and gives them extra dosages of intelligence to be able to make these unbelievable contributions to the intelligence of the world in the various different sciences. So, unlike what we spoke earlier in the creation, in the singular force of creation, where there is a distance created between the creator because of and the creation. What we discussed earlier, that the creator is not expressed in the creation because his infinite power is above the finite creation. The only thing we notice is the power, his infinite ability to make something from nothing, but it's not expressed. The world, the creation itself doesn't capture that energy within it. It points to it, but it has not owned it. It doesn't become us. It remains a force outside of us that's responsible to creating us. As opposed to the 10 utterances, over here, God is leaning into the creation. That's what's so special. He's leaning into the creation. He's not above it, transcending. He's leaning in. He's allowing each creature and each being to reflect other aspects of his all embracing potential and every type of quality, all including qualities that God has And each creature and each being sees one of those qualities owns one of those qualities through its who and what it is, down to the beauty of a flower. The beauty of a flower and the unique flower, whether it's a beautiful rose or whether it's a lily or some other kind of a flower, a tulip. Each one brings forth another facet of the divine beauty. So over here, the creations are actually channeling and expressing of the divine. So they're saying God is investing himself into the creation and into all the details of the creation. God is respecting, he wants to respect the creations by allowing them to share his talents and each one to express another facet of God's talents and of Hashem's abilities. All the variations of colors and all the music that there is in God is expressed in his creations. That's an enormous closeness. It's not distance, it's closeness, amazing closeness. The immanence of God he's leaning into us instead of being above us. And each and every one of us has the merit and the ability to express something unique of him. So these are the two dimensions in creation. But going back to what we said earlier, being that the world was created in a level of obscuring, so the world, a person who's a magnificent, talented singer or artist can claim that art and that ability, that voice is his or her own and not attributed that to God's talent. In other words, we can steal all these things because God is allowing us to own it. We can steal it and claim it's ours and not give recognition to where it really comes from. Recognizing that we didn't create ourselves. We didn't create our vocal cords if we know how to sing beautifully. We didn't create our minds if we're brilliant scholars. We didn't create our hearts if we're noble, philanthropic, incredibly good, compassionate people. That's God's kindness coming through each and every one of us. Of course, we take part of it because we can choose to develop or not develop, but the essential powers are all divine powers. So even though the world was gifted with all this gift, it can remain detached and separated from God, ignoring God. That's where the Torah comes in to help connect all of this to the Creator. And the Torah does it on two levels. Just like creation itself has two qualities of the divine in it. One quality is the fact that we exist. That itself is an enormous praise for God. That he can create matter from nothing to something. The common quality that we all share in unison. That too is not revealed on its own. It needs to be revealed. Who will reveal it? The Torah. The one utterance that God creates the world with will be revealed through the Torah. The 10 utterances which God creates the world will also be revealed through the Torah. How? So therefore the Rebbe says the Torah itself also has two dimensions to it. There is an element of Torah which in it we only sense God. We don't sense the specifics of the Torah. We only sense the brilliant mind, creative mind of the Creator. We're not recognizing the intelligent ideas. We're just looking at the scholar. We're looking at the brilliant mind, not the teachings itself. So where do we find that in the Torah? So when God spoke the 10 Commandments, the sages, there's a verse that says, Achaz diber Elokim shtayim zu shamati. God spoke once, we heard two. That means that really when God delivered all 10 Commandments, initially it was all delivered in one utterance. At that moment, there was a supersonic boom. God spoke. It didn't even make a difference what he was saying. It was one thing. It was that God is speaking. Don't kill. Don't commit murder. Don't commit adultery. Leave. Honor the Shabbos. Honor your parents, your father and your mother. Don't take my name in vain. All that was irrelevant. We didn't even hear that because that's not even what it was. It was the fact that God is talking. Then there is the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments is that you're saying, so what are you saying? So what is he saying? Honor your parents is the 5th commandment. Don't covet. Don't steal. Don't take my name in vain. Honor the Shabbos. Each one with all of its infinite wisdom and boundless meaning. These are the core principles. Later, they translate into 613 commandments, which turn into billions and billions and billions of details and sub-details, which when applied, all these things to the world help uplift the creation and connect the creation to God. So these are the 2 levels of the Torah. The Torah as it is all one singular reality. It's the divine intelligence. And the Torah that is all the specific elements of the Torah, all the details of the Torah. Where we admire and ask and experience the brilliance of this teaching and the brilliance of that teaching. And the difference actually between these 2 dimensions of Torah is also experienced in the one who's studying the Torah. In other words, there's 2 experiences you can have when you're studying Torah. One experience you can have when you're studying Torah is when you're suddenly filled with awe, the fact that you're studying God's Torah. And at that moment, you lose all sense of what you're learning. It doesn't make a difference. You suddenly get so overwhelmed by the fact that it's God. You're engaging with God. You're sensing God in the Torah. You're not hearing even the this or the now. It's not called studying unless you're actually understanding and learning. It's a mitzvah to learn and understand. So you're learning and understanding, but what's really, really, really capturing your heart and soul is not the subject. It wouldn't make a difference if you're learning the book of Zohar, or you're learning a Mishnah, or you're learning intricate details in the laws of purity and impurity. It's all irrelevant to you because you don't care about it. The fact is, just teach me. I want to learn. My soul is ablaze with love and desire to connect to God. I don't care what it is. It's the mitzvah of learning. Now, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya says that we should take every hour when we study. If we study consecutively for a few hours, we should stop every hour and think about the fact that this is God's Torah. And remember how much we love God. At that moment, you're like melting into the one utterance. It's all one. It doesn't make a difference the subject. It's not about the subject. It's who is the one this is his wisdom. And then there is you admire the beauty of the Torah, the beauty of the ideas. You probe the ideas. You study the ideas. You go into every letter and every part of every letter and every detail and detail of detail. 2 aspects of Torah. The effects of these 2 dimensions of Torah in the world is that they uncover these 2 dimensions within creation. Number one, we want to uncover the uniform godliness that encompasses all of existence, that there is a singular power that brings all of existence, an infinite power, pre-definition, that just brings the world into existence. And in that we become completely void and nothing in the face of godliness. That creates us to become completely nullified in his truth. And then we study the Torah in a way which we see where we explore the details and the sub-details and we navigate all the crevices and all the avenues and streets and so on and so forth. And what that does is that helps us uncover the beauty, the divine beauty within creation. And in a way where we recognize its details, we recognize its specifics, and we enable each creature and each being to express and reveal Hashem in a unique way that no other creature could reveal. That is the difference, and that is the uniqueness of this. Now the Rebbe says now for a moment, why are both needed? Why do we need to reveal the singular utterance that God created all the world and also reveal not the 10 utterances. In other words, to look at each thing individually and let it shine for what it is. It's because the godliness that the creations, what we discussed earlier, God leaning into the creation, shining a specific light to each creature and to each being individually, that's very, very special because that becomes so much more part of us. But on the other hand, it's a small, tiny little bit of a crumb of his divinity that shines on the tulip, and a tiny little crumb of his divinity that shines on the rose. And understand that it's the uniqueness, it's a crumb of a crumb of a crumb, as opposed to the unified power that God that encircles all of creation. That's the infinite light, the infinite power of God. So in terms of quality, you're dealing with a much higher level of godliness. But on the other hand, it remains distant and removed from us. That's why when we have both of them, we're connecting both to God's infinity and also allowing the individualized godly power to shine and to allow us to be special and uncover the unique individual divinity that we all are given and gifted with. What is the ultimate objective? Here's where the Rebbe gets very creative. The Rebbe says the objective is the fusion of both. That we should actually be able to rise up and capture the infinity of God. And by doing that, what happens when we experience that, we generally melt away, we dissolve, and it's not about us at all. It's just that, as we spoke earlier, the light is shining on God, not on us. It doesn't really make a difference. What's like the philanthropist that we're just applauding for them. There's no detail over here. It's just the uniform. And that cancels us. And in that canceling, we're able to like touch the infinite. But then we don't suffice with that. We return back to our small little selves and our individual self, activate our own godliness. But when we're activating our own godliness, we don't see our own godliness as something separated, but we see it as an extension of the greater uniform infinite light. So we're able to act and then do that so strongly that the infinite light that is higher than the world actually becomes expressed in our own individual selves, in our own specific. We're not losing the greater infinite. In other words, when you're looking at the tree within the forest, but you're not losing the forest by looking at the tree. Even when you're looking at the tiniest detail and twig and smallest tiny thing of one of the trees, you're capturing, and in your mind, you're aware of the entire awesome forest. And it's almost like you're recognizing that this little twig is a twig of the forest. You sense the forest, the entire forest in that little twig. So it's the beauty of being able to capture all of the divine truth in every little aspect of creation, merging the two together. And the Rebbe says that that's the concept of making a home for God in this world. A home for God in the low. That's the purpose of creation, as we discussed many times. Making a home for Hashem in the low. A home for Hashem is where a home is where a person lives. The entire being, the person's entire self lives in their home. It's not a projection, a particular aspect of a person living in their home. When you're in a home, it's you, your entire self. But at the same time, the home should be in the low, which means that in every detail of the world, it should be sensed that it's part of the bigger home. That's the ultimate objective of these two elements of the Torah. So now once we have this, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to tomorrow in the next class to bring this all back together to Behar and Bechukosei and Bamidbar and the desert, and see how this all leads into the giving of the Torah, which is coming our way, Bezrat Hashem, next week.